Hi team, welcome back and to Unleash Your Campaign Power. In this module, I'm going to explain the secret campaign framework to use, or not so secret campaign framework that this course is sort of centered around, and take you through all the concepts in that so you can create your own framework for this campaign. This framework is what I've used for every successful campaign that I've run. So I know it works. And if you follow this formula, you will get better outcomes. Just like I mentioned previously, it's about actually executing on it. So you'll likely have some aha moments as I go through this seemingly simple framework. So don't ignore those instincts, act on them and follow through is my advice. What actually helps, particularly if you have a team and or agencies that you're working with, is to note this down, note your channels and tactics down, create this campaign framework that's in this week's workbook, and you'll find that everyone finds it much easier to follow along and actually execute on the campaign. And it's a really great reference point for yourself and the team and anybody involved. So I've provided the campaign framework diagram in this week's module for you. You can download that and have a look at it. And the idea is to create your own. So it's going to be different depending on what channels you currently using, whether you're in the B2B space or B2C space, or even which category you're operating in. But you will be using certain channels already. So it's about noting down the most appropriate ones for this campaign and making sure you don't forget any. You'll be surprised how many channels we actually forget when we're executing on a campaign in particular, and especially if we're running multiple campaigns at once. So my advice is don't add new channels for a particular campaign or for this campaign that we're running. Utilize the ones that you're already using and what's already established. And as we know, we can never use all the channels all the time. So picking the ones that are most appropriate is the right way to go. And however, in saying that, to get the best out of your campaign, you want to try and get that message across as many channels as you can. Sounds like I've just contradicted myself, but bear with me and we'll go through the framework and I'll explain. So it's all centered around this diagram, which is shown on the one pager. I will now take you through the framework. So the main concepts in the framework are very easy to remember. Number one, center everything around an event. And two, have pre-event and post-event strategies. So want to leverage every opportunity that you can. So let's talk about what I mean by an event or centering everything around an event. This could be something that you own, like an event that you have established as a business, such as a face-to-face info session, an expo, a thought leadership event, a professional development event, networking events, guest speaker events, seminars and workshops, conferences, influencer events, intimate breakfast events, or even festivals, to name a few. There's heaps and heaps of events that your campaign could be centered around. A webinar or a virtual roundtable is another great example of an event you could center your campaign around. And a webinar seems like a bit of a one-off show, but I've actually run a webinar campaign that had pre and post strategies to really leverage off that thought leadership topic that's presented at the webinar. Or instead of a physical event or a virtual event where people are getting together, it might be an event that's an annual sales event or a promotional event. We have many of these across Australia, like the Black Friday sales, even around seasonal things like Christmas sales or Christmas, Mother's Day, Father's Day, those types of things, end of financial year sales, click frenzies, all of that sort of thing. So that could be another integral thing that you could center your campaign around and have pre and post strategies. And if you're doing that like a annual promotional sales event, that's a great thing to jump onto and leverage, as they're very established and well-known sort of sales and promotional events that you can jump on and most likely leverage a little bit more. So a lot of what I said can cost quite a bit, but a few of the other examples, such as webinars, don't actually have to cost a lot of money. So this is going to work to no matter what size of budget that you're working with. And a webinar or a sales event where you don't have to have people in person or hiring out venues and things like that that can be quite costly, will be really cost effective if you've got a small size budget. But you'll still get some really great results from doing that. So I've got a really good example of running a successful event on a budget, and this was actually an in-person professional development event that I ran for our stakeholder, or should I say influencer audience, but not influencers in the traditional sense of social media influencers per se. I'm talking about the indirect audiences that you target that have an influence on your direct buyer. So this was a group of teachers that had a direct effect on influencing the decision their students made for higher education after they finished school. So it was I angled it as a professional development event for teachers. I set it up with a carrot, which was a very well-known speaker to this audience. I knew that that would be a carrot. They'd be very engaged. He would be the reason they would want to come, basically. And also made the program, I utilized talent that we had within the business to add value through the program. So whatever you're doing, especially if it's an owned event, your sole purpose for that is to add value to your audience. So being a professional development day, I wanted to bring these teachers some new concepts and learnings that would, they would see some value in, that they might not have exposed to that information elsewhere. So this was a really intimate event. I had around 25 attendees. We had a few sessions. It was a reasonable commitment from those that attended, and because it was in person, is why it ended up being a relatively intimate event. It took most of the school day or the working day, so these teachers had to make a bit of a commitment to and arrangements to actually be there, so it had to be of real value to them. The impact of this event, whilst intimate, whilst small, and whilst on a budget, was actually massive due to the value that the speakers and the sessions brought to the teachers on the day. Not to mention the carrot of the well-known speaker that I was able to bring in that everybody appreciated. So after the event, I ran a survey to the attendees, asking them various questions about their thoughts on the event. and we had a really good response, and there were multiple responses that actually noted it was the best professional development day they had ever attended, which was great feedback, really great feedback. However, it's only anecdotal feedback. So I'm providing you this example not as a best practice example, but I'm going to actually pull it apart to explain what I would have done differently, how I would have integrated this campaign framework to be able to measure a more quantifiable outcome from this event. So one of the things is I couldn't actually, so I got that great anecdotal feedback from the attendees, but I couldn't actually track how many customers that we eventually got as a result of that event. So I couldn't provide a return on investment for that particular event. In hindsight, we could have set up a tracking system where we noted any influence that occurred for new customers that we got on board. There was a few other gaps as well. So because I only got 25 attendees and I ran it as a in-person event only, this was actually before we experienced COVID and all the marketing teams across the nation and the world hustled together to run online events. But I could very well have run this as a hybrid event, which would have captured a more national audience. So I captured obviously only the audience that was close to the location of where we held that, physically and geographically close. And yeah, I would have set up some sort of referral attribution that connected that event to customers that came. So again, very anecdotally, and this was just from quite some studious investigation afterwards and being in touch with those teachers that attended. So that's the other thing. Post the event, which is part of this campaign framework, we could have set up some ongoing communications to engage with those teachers that attended, and basically with the purpose of having them refer customers to us. And imagine if I could have added some quantifiable results to that. For example, so our average customer value was above $30,000. So this event cost under 10 grand. If I had, say, each of those 25 teachers refer just one student to us, you can see how the return on investment from that event would have been fantastic. And why not invest again the year after to cover, even more teachers and to keep building those relationships with those influencers. The best standout, I suppose, from this event is the value in the content. So I had some great speakers lined up that talked about relevant topics and information that the audience was really interested in. So in this course, I'm also going to go over how to produce your content, or that big key theme, that big idea that's really going to elevate the message that you send in your campaign. And next we're going to talk about the pre-event strategies, or what I'll call the hype promo for your campaign.